Come here. I want to tell you a secret. One of the biggest troublemakers in our lives is this right here. Those who know me know that sometimes I can be blunt, direct with the things I say, and that can come across as rude, mean, belligerent, condescending, uncaring, unloving, indifferent. But I don't mean it that way. It's just not what I mean. But despite my intentions, that's the message I convey. And that's a problem that we all struggle with. We all struggle with our mouths, with our words. So today we're going to be looking at 1 John. Now, I know some of you out there may be thinking, well, why doesn't he go to James? Because James talks about the tongue and a rudder and a fire and so forth. Well, the reason we're looking at 1 John is because in my daily reading, when I read this passage in 1 John, we're going to be in chapter 4. And I'm going to it on my phone and trying to pull it up now. Ooh, I just closed the app. Not what I wanted. Reopen. But as I was reading this passage, what stood out to me and what God was showing me was that my speech was not where it needs to be. So we're going to be looking at 1 John chapter 4, verses 1 through 6, and I'll be reading on my phone. And I'll go ahead and put the words on the screen right now. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. For many false prophets have gone out into the world. By this you know the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confesses that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God, and every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming and now is in the world already. Little children, you are from God and have overcome them, for he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. They are from the world, therefore they speak from the world, and the world listens to them. We are from God. Whoever knows God listens to us. Whoever is not from God does not listen to us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. Now, this passage is interesting because John's overall is dealing with love. In fact, the next verse 7, he begins to talk about God being love. And so the love is the larger context here. But what's interesting about these 6 verses is he's talking about the words people say, the messages they communicate, the philosophies they advocate, the lessons that they tell others. The words that we say says a lot about us. And whether it's a theological application, such as someone denying Christ, someone denying the gospel, despite what they may claim about being a Christian, if they don't believe that Jesus died, rose again, and they don't believe that salvation is through faith alone and grace alone, through Christ alone, then they're not Christians. But if someone does believe these things, and when John says confess, he means to state what you believe. If someone does believe these things, they are from God. They are Christians. So it can be a theological thing. It can also be a practical thing. Do the words that we say convey love? That is, think about it this way. Do the things that we say help others, or do they hurt them? That's the struggle I was dealing with. And that is my bluntness, my directness was, despite my intentions, I was actually hurting. And that's not good. I remember getting in trouble with, not really in trouble, but I say in trouble because my boss didn't like it. I stated, I'm confused. Well, what I meant was, I didn't understand what you're wanting. So I need more information so I can have a better understanding of it. However, what I communicated to my boss was, you are failing to communicate, it's your fault, and you're not a clear person. not very good. I didn't really get in trouble, but she pulled me aside and said, hey, she said, I struggle with the same thing you do. I'm the same way you are. I'm blunt too. And I struggle with it, so I understand. Do you realize what you said? And I went, no. But once she showed me, I went, I remember one time a professor of mine in a seminary class, he brought in some changes were going on in the denomination I was in. Some changes were being proposed in a major program. And he brought it in for me and one other PhD student to look at and give our opinions on. So he laid out the information on the table, and I did this. Yep, it's their centralizing control, and what they're telling people is a big lie. He didn't take kindly to that analysis. Not because he disagreed with it or agreed with it. That didn't matter. It was the way I analyzed it. My analysis was blunt, direct, and came across bad. He retorted back, I needed to take 2 weeks, because there were 2 weeks between the sessions, take the 2 weeks, look at it again, and come back to the next session with a better understanding, because I clearly didn't understand it fully, because I only looked at it for a few seconds. I didn't look at it anymore. I came back 2 weeks later, and he went, John, you're right. He still didn't like the way I analyzed it. And the reason is because I was so quick and so blunt. He was fascinated that I came up with my analysis so quickly, but the way I went about it was wrong. I was hurtful, and I didn't mean to be. And what we need to do is be helpful in our words. And helpful is actually done through critique and through encouragement. And this is part of what I am still learning. I'm still learning this lesson. I still struggle with being blunt. So this is a journey for me. But we can be helpful by critiquing and encouraging. When we critique, we're helpful when we say, hey, this is the weakness, this is the places where it needs improvement, and why it needs improvement, and here's how to improve it. That's a critique that's helpful. Now, there are some Christians that say, oh, no, you shouldn't critique at all because, that's just mean. Well, no, it's not. Saying, hey, it's not perfect. It's not up to par. It's not up to the standards that it should be up to. Do this and it is. That's a helpful critique, and that's loving. That conveys a message of love. Now, if you go to them and say, that stinks, that's bad, it's just horrible, well, that's not helpful. But you can also help people with your speech, and I can help people with my speech when we encourage them. Hey, you did a good job. Hey, this thing that you did, it's great in this way. I like this and I like that. Keep up the good work. That's encouraging. And when we do those things, when we encourage and critique, we can be helpful. And when we're helping people with our speech, that conveys a message of love. Now, some people don't like any critique. And honestly, they need to get over themselves. And I struggle with that too, but that's another video for another time maybe. But the lesson I learned when I read this, going back to that, the lesson I learned was that I need to make sure that the speech that I use is a speech that extols, that exalts Christ, that lifts him up, that helps others know him. And how do I do that? I need to do that by offering encouragement when someone does something right. Even if it's a small thing, encourage them in that. If something does something wrong or does something incomplete or incorrect, instead of condemning them for being wrong and incapable, I need to point out those weaknesses and offer ways to improve it. Communicate that I didn't grasp it. And here's how it would help me. In short, I need to be helpful. And maybe you struggle with that same thing. Maybe you struggle with your speech. Maybe the things that you say have been hurtful. It may make us feel good, and we may even justify it. I've justified my speech for a long time. We may even justify it, but that doesn't mean that it's right. So we need to find ways to let our speech be helpful, not condemning people, but showing them love by pointing out weaknesses where they need to be, offering solutions to those weaknesses, but definitely offering encouragement. Essentially, helpful speech. I'll just end this video by saying this. What kind of speech would help you improve your life? That's the kind of speech that others need to hear from you and from me. Have a great day. Did you like this video and did it help you? If so, go ahead and smash that like button and go ahead and subscribe. Then head over to my Patreon page because with your help, I can continue to make these videos that offer hopefully encouraging advice, helpful advice, and maybe even a little entertaining. God bless.